Hello everyone. How's it going? This is Azren here, owner of the Calgary Language Nerds, and welcome to today's YouTube video and podcast episode. Today's episode is going to be a podcast and a video. Sometimes I make only video content that doesn't get to the podcast, and sometimes I make content that's podcast only, doesn't make it to YouTube. So what I'd like to talk about today is how I feel when I speak in French and Spanish. This is a complicated issue, to be quite frank with you, and I'll try to be as articulate as I can. I think a good place to start is to talk about how advanced of a level I have in each language. Well, for French, back in 2012, I actually took an exam at a French university. And I got a certificate, which is basically a DALF equivalent. So a DALF exam, if you don't know what that is, it's an advanced French exam that has two levels. Level 1 is low advanced, level 2 is high advanced. And I took an equivalency in every single category of the French language: reading, writing, speaking, listening. In 2012, I scored a C1.5, a C1, a C1.5, or a C2. So that basically means low advanced, mid advanced, or high advanced. And that was a long time ago. At that point in time, I was still a university student doing a French degree. I was doing a French language and literature degree. So my level has improved since that time. So in short, I have a very advanced level in French. My Spanish level is the same as my French level. I've spoken both languages for a long time. French has been about 26 years as I'm recording this today. Spanish has been, I want to say, 16 years as of today, 15 or 16 years. 16 years as of today. So I have a very advanced level in both languages. Now, I'll admit to you that when I speak in French and Spanish, especially if it's in, how do I say this? Let's say this. When I speak in French and Spanish, frequently I put pressure on myself. I put pressure on myself to speak, I suppose you can say speak perfectly. And it's because I have such an advanced level in both languages. And so I feel a pressure to speak perfectly. And it feels I'm trying to find the right word for exactly how it feels. But perhaps the word would be anxiety provoking a little bit when I speak in those languages. It depends on who I speak with, obviously. If I speak with someone that I know well, it might not be, I don't feel that pressure. I think as I'm speaking this out now and as I'm exploring how I feel, literally as I make this podcast and video, as I'm exploring how I feel in these two languages, I think it's when the relationship with the person I'm talking to has been established. That's not true. When I have a learning relationship established with the other person, for example, they are my teacher, or there's someone that's a friend that knows that, hey, I'm going to make mistakes in French. In those types of environments, I feel no pressure. I ask lots of questions like, hey, should I say this sentence like this or like this? Does this sound natural or does it not sound natural? That's exactly right. So in those kinds of situations where it's clear that it's a learning-based relationship, maybe we're friends too, but we have a learning-based relationship. When I'm in those types of situations, I don't feel nearly in fact, I don't feel really any pressure. I feel zero, or as close to zero pressure as you could feel. But in situations where that learning relationship is not established, that's where I feel, those are the circumstances in which I feel quite anxious and I feel a lot of mental pressure. And the reality is, especially nowadays, the situations in which I speak French and Spanish are not learning relationships. They might be, I have, here's a great example. There's someone who works for me that I speak French with. There's actually, there have been multiple people over the years like that. And I feel, God, I feel very nervous speaking to these people because I think I haven't set up that kind of a learning relationship with them to say, hey, look, like, I know I speak French very well, but I'm going to make mistakes, right? And I feel like they might judge me because I teach French. And I'm worried that if I hire someone, for example, who's a native speaker of French or Spanish, and I speak to that person in French or Spanish, and then they know that I teach the language, and then I go and make mistakes in the language. What if they judge me and they think that, oh, Azren shouldn't be teaching French or Spanish? He still makes really basic mistakes. Because who knows what they consider basic and what, you know, they might consider it to be basic mistake, and maybe it's not a basic mistake. Or maybe they hear me make a mistake and they think, oh, Azren's making that kind of mistake. Oh my God, that's so silly. And maybe it was a silly mistake, but my brain literally just misfired in the moment. And it's, as I'm exploring this topic right now, literally in front of you guys in this exact moment, I'm realizing that even in other languages where I'm not super fluent, Mandarin or even, it's not quite the right word, where I'm not at a very advanced level, because my Mandarin is relatively strong, but it's relatively good. But even in those languages where I don't have a high advanced level, if I'm talking to someone and the relationship we don't have a learning relationship established, I also might have a tendency to feel quite anxious, nervous, or put a lot of pressure on myself. I'll give you an example. If I'm in a restaurant or something, in a Chinese restaurant, for instance, and I want to order in Mandarin, I'm going to be terrified to do so. Weirdly, I'm realizing this now. Weirdly, I might feel just as afraid of ordering food in Mandarin, where I have a lower level, as I would ordering food in Spanish if both places were a new restaurant. I'll say that again. If I went to a Spanish-speaking place and it's a restaurant that I've never been to, I'm unfamiliar with their menu, unfamiliar with the food and so on and so forth, where the people are from, the servers, and so on and so forth, the owner. Or I go to a place where a Chinese restaurant where I speak Mandarin, I might feel just as nervous speaking in Mandarin as in Spanish, even though I'm way better in Spanish and definitely have the level in Spanish to handle a restaurant interaction. Definitely do. But I just feel nervous because we don't have that learning environment established. I'll tell you this story here. I went to, this was months and months ago, although I did go there quite recently now that I'm thinking of it. There's a restaurant here in Calgary where, for one reason or another, ever since I've walked in, they addressed me in Spanish. They never once addressed me in English. I don't know why. Maybe they thought I was a native speaker. I don't know where they got the idea from, but they've always addressed me in Spanish. They've never even said hello to me in English. And I feel self-conscious, man. I feel self-conscious when I go there. A little less now because I'm more familiar with the place. I'm more familiar with the staff, but boy, I used to feel really self-conscious. So, yeah, it's interesting. Interesting, right? I don't know what you guys can learn from this. I'm not sure what lessons there are. I can maybe try and pull a few out. Maybe some of the lessons to learn would be, it's important to establish an environment where you're comfortable when you're trying to learn a language, right? That's important. It's important to realize that fluency, at least for me, fluency and confidence don't have a one-to-one relationship, a one-to-one ratio. There's not a one-to-one ratio for fluency and confidence. It's not like you get 1% better, 1% more fluent, and that therefore you get 1% more confident. And for me personally, I don't think it's a one-to-one relationship. As I get more fluent, I do get more confident, but it's not a one-to-one connection. It's not 1% more fluent, 1% more confident. Maybe it's like 10, I don't know if it's whatever. It's 5% more fluent and 1% more confident. It's something like that. So fluency and confidence are not directly tied for me personally. Another learning point is that, maybe it's just interesting for you to notice that even people who are very fluent in a language, they might often feel quite nervous or anxious when speaking that language. Maybe you didn't know that. Now you do. And because I'm definitely not the only one who's very fluent who feels anxious or nervous when they talk in the language. Another thing that I can pull out is fluency is definitely situational. I think it is. Fluency, I think, is situational. You might be more fluent in some situations and less fluent in other situations. Now, the situation could be the situation could depend on what you're talking about. Certain topics you're more fluent, other topics less fluent. The situation could be where the other speaker is from. Maybe you're not familiar with their accent. The situation could be how well you slept the night before. The situation could be where are you physically? If you're in a noisy bar versus a quiet, I don't know, coffee shop, you might be more comfortable in one environment than the other. Maybe the bar makes you feel less pressure because it's more chill and fun, and the coffee shop you feel more pressure because it's they can actually hear what you're saying and you're having a deeper conversation. Maybe you're the other way around. Maybe in the coffee shop you're more confident because you can actually hear what the person's saying. And bar is just overwhelming. Who knows? It could be the person you're talking to. You feel nervous talking to one person but not someone else. Like I was saying, I feel nervous when I talk to people where I don't have that learning, that permission for me to make mistakes, and the permission for me to ask questions, and the permission for me to be a learner and not be perfect. Right? Those situations I feel more uncomfortable. Maybe what I have to do is just give myself permission to make mistakes, give myself permission to not be perfect, even if I didn't explicitly, get the permission from the other person, but just give myself permission, maybe. I don't know. All right, guys. Well, thank you for watching this. Thank you for listening. I appreciate your attention. Have a great day, and we'll chat soon. Bye-bye.